Well, good morning or afternoon or evening, wherever you are. Broadcasting from my studio in Salt Lake City, Utah for The Artist's Voice. This is Jerry Hardesty. I am the host and the producer of the show and empower artists to tell their stories and talk about their work. Now, in the past, and you may have heard me say this before, but in the past, you could only listen to the podcast. But now, of course, with this modern technology, you can actually not only listen, but also watch. And while you're watching, guess what? You can make comments. Let me put that up there. And make comments, leave your name, drop your name, and tell us where you're from. If you're watching, of course. Duh. And if you miss the show, it will be available on Facebook and YouTube almost instantly after the end of the broadcast. All that being said, I want to bring on my guest for today's show, and that is, and I'm probably going to butcher her name, so she can correct me if I do, but it's Lenka Konopasek, and she's originally from the Czech Republic. Lenka immigrated to the U.S. over 30 years ago and now resides in Salt Lake City, Utah. As a professional artist, she teaches at the University of Utah, as well as Westminster College here in Salt Lake City, and has her own studio practice. Welcome, Lenka, to the show.
Hi, Jerry. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And did I butcher your last name or your first name?
No, you did good. My name is Lenka Konopasek. Yeah, you did great.
Lenka Konopasek. Okay, good. Well, you, according to the information that I've researched about you, you did not receive your BFA until you came to the U.S. and studied at the University of Utah here in Salt Lake City, and later received your MFA from the Maine College of Art in Portland, Maine. So does that mean, say, in your formative years that perhaps the Czech Republic did not support art education?
No, the opposite is actually true because I attended sort of like a special visual art school after my regular school hours. It wasn't an aftercare or anything like that. It was actually like a school dedicated to visual arts for children. And I started the school when I was about 6, and I continued through the age of 14. And then I went to Prague and studied art in Prague in a School of Applied Arts. And then I was doing various jobs because I was trying to get into the Prague Academy of Fine Arts. And that was quite difficult during communism. And then I finally got accepted, and I decided to leave the country. So I sort of, it was a difficult decision to make, and it was more political than anything. But actually, Czech Republic always supported the arts quite a bit, and I think people were very interested in the arts. I think especially because during socialism, there wasn't that much to buy. So art was one of the things that people actually were able to buy. So I think, ironically, probably more people were buying the art before than they are buying now. That's at least what I think.
Huh, that's interesting. Well, do you still have family in the Czech Republic?
Yes, I have my mom and I have my brother and a lot of extended family.
Fantastic. And I read that you try to go back once a year, but it's probably kind of difficult to do so during the pandemic.
Yes, it has been really sad because usually we try to go over, my husband and my son every summer, and my mom comes over the winter. So of course we couldn't travel this past summer, and my mom is not able to come in the winter time. So I don't know. I'm hoping for next summer.
Yeah. Oh, I understand. 2020 has been a very difficult year, and
yes,
and I have a daughter and a son, both in the Midwest, and can't see them. Or all my grandkids are there as well.
I know it is really upsetting. It's sort of funny because I started studying on my own, like Italian, and I'm also like revisiting German, and so I'm like studying all these languages, hoping that I will be able to actually go somewhere.
Of
So
course.
yeah, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
There
Yeah.
you go. Well, I have to tell you, I have to share with you that my wife and I went on a European vacation back in 2013, I believe it was, and we did visit Prague, and we were fascinated with it. I do have a funny story to tell, but I'll save that for another time because this isn't about me, but
It's
um,
okay.
a funny story about being in Prague and visiting the castle there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it won't take long. But my wife and I, everywhere we went, we would take pictures of our feet, and uh, that's because we purchased shoes so that we have good walking shoes over there. And the where we purchased them, they said, "Oh, take pictures and bring them back." So we decided to take pictures of our feet and bring them back. And we were at the castle, and we were around a manhole cover taking pictures of our feet. And the guards at the castle, they look straight ahead. They don't show any emotion at all. But when we would take pictures of our feet, this one guard, his eyes, you could just see him go side to side. So we had that. That was rather comical. We enjoyed that. So
That's
well,
good.
yeah, yeah. So when did you realize that you wanted to pursue an art career?
I was always interested in the arts, and as I said, even as a kid, I was always drawing, making things, and for a long time, I was sort of like wanting to be a sculptor, then I wanted to be a painter, and now I'm a little bit of everything. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that that certainly leads to my next question, and that is that you don't want to be called a painter or you don't want to be called a sculptor, but you work in both that areas. So, how about teacher? Do you want to be called a teacher?
I don't know. That's I'm sort of the happiest with the artist label, rather than like trying to characterize exactly what category I belong to. I think nowadays, especially artists, have to fulfill so many different roles as writers, as promoters, as salespeople, as
Yes.
I don't know, teachers, whatever. So um, I think I don't know. I think I'm all of those things and trying to sort of negotiate my way in between, and so I still have some studio time as well.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And one of the biggest responsibilities, or at least that I'm finding as an artist,
Uh-huh.
is marketing.
Right.
And we're not taught to be marketers.
Mm.
So it is very difficult, very challenging, and sometimes I feel like I'm spending more time, and probably you do as well, marketing myself rather than creating, and that can be frustrating.
Well, I think on some level I'm probably my worst enemy because I'm interested in the studio work. I'm interested in showing my work, but I'm not really into the marketing side of it. So I don't do that much of it really.
Yeah,
I do. I do apply and I participate in a lot of exhibitions in installations, workshops, things like that. But direct marketing, that's just not my cup of tea. I would love to sort of give that over to a gallery or to some kind of agent,
yeah,
But yeah, but it's interesting because people come to me sometimes years later after they see my work somewhere, either in my studio or a particular show or just somewhere, and they are interested, and suddenly they want to purchase work, and it's really without any marketing. So it's almost just word of mouth or you
hmm.
know
So,
experience, I
do you
guess.
have a big following?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, a lot of people know of me. I don't know how big of a following I have. I don't really, that's. I think that's sort of difficult because I do work that is not very commercial,
Hmm.
especially with some of my paper art pieces. And
Yes.
I mean, they show quite widely in a lot of different venues and states and places, but um, it's more difficult, I think, to market them. So I'm just trying not to get stuck with it, even though I'm obviously really happy when things sell.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Of course. Well, what are your teaching responsibilities?
Well, right now it has been a big challenge because I've been teaching one class, which is sort of interactive online class at the
Hmm.
University of Utah. And then I'm teaching two other studio classes, which are hybrid, in a hybrid mode at the Westminster College. And it has been just a lot of extra work for me, and I think for everybody, because we have to sort of switch back and forth, all these different online sites and create demonstration videos.
Hmm.
Even in my in-person class at Westminster, I continuously have a lot of students who are in isolation. So
Hmm.
you basically have to provide online content for them and work with them one-on-one. So it's a lot of work, and it's a little scary going into a class, because I think in a studio setting it's very difficult to keep the 6 foot distance,
Sure.
because you have to sort of walk around people, walk around easels and drawing horses, and so it has been a challenge. It has been a challenge, but I think it's equally difficult on the students too, because I think they're just getting bombarded by all these online requests and assignments, and I think a lot of them are not coping that great, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that goes not just at
Hmm.
the university level, but it's on down below
Hmm. I
for
agree.
students as well, and perhaps even more difficult for the younger students than college
Right.
people, who are should be self-driven at least. Well,
Hmm.
you said you teach a hybrid class. Can you explain that a little bit? What's a hybrid class?
Hybrid class is basically partially in person
Hmm.
and part online. It really is sort of a mix of those two. I've been trying to do as much work in person with the students, but just today I'm switching at least a couple of the classes online. I don't
Hmm.
know for how long, just because I'm getting really nervous, because half of my students are in isolation.
Uh,
So basically what I create, we do a lot of Zoom meetings. We
hmm.
do a lot of critiques over Zooms. I use Canvas, which is a platform, sort of interactive website, where I put in all the instructions, assignments, grading, videos, images, all kinds of stuff, and students can put in their own images. So, I mean, it's not ideal. I think I think it's working. It's hard to tell. I think right now
Uh-huh.
it's just such a difficult time to really figure out, like, how much the students are getting out of it. Um, I just know that it's a lot of work, a lot of
Yeah.
extra work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Not too long ago, I interviewed a high school art teacher,
Oh yeah.
and he
Awesome.
was echoing the same thing that you're
Mhm.
saying, because he has to prepare three different ways for each
Yes.
class. So
Yes.
he at the end of
That.
the day, when you have to put together your teaching
Mhm.
notes and so forth, it's extremely time consuming. So
Well, I will give you. I'm sorry. I will give you one example of my teaching in person, how it looks like. Okay, so I come to class. Right before class, I check my email to see who is not coming. Okay, just to see what new students are in isolation. Um, then I have to log on to my Zoom, which steps after steps, verification after verification.
Yes.
I am teaching this class in person for the few students who are in class. I have my video hooked up, so I'm recording. And I also am doing Zoom at the same time. And I am on a computer and on a projector. I'm showing the students examples of work we are going to do. So I have like 4 different things I have to operate at the same time. And sometimes I'm just so exhausted because,
Sure.
there is always some kind of malfunction of something. So
Yes.
things are never easy, right? So this doesn't work, or that doesn't work, or this person cannot log in, or that's not working properly, or something's up. And so you sort of think, oh, it was so much easier without the technology, really.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So you have to be technological savvy and prepared for the worst.
Right.
And that's why I had to give you a new link today, is because the other day I just messed it up and I was recording on your
Right.
your interview, the end of another interview. So anyway, that's beside the point, I suppose. But so how do you squeeze in time for your own studio practice with that kind of responsibility?
Well, going to the studio for me is just sort of a reward. So I really like it, and I do spend a lot of time in my studio. But it is a challenge, and I have to sort of multitask continuously to save some of the extra time to go to the studio. I have a 13-year-old son, and who is, homeschooling right now.
Sure.
So he is online. So there is, unfortunately, there is a lot of screaming here because like you just saw him passing behind me. I always laugh like when people do that sort of funny thing on Facebook, how they prepare for Zoom meeting. It's because I think it's really almost like laughable nowadays, like, being professional on Zoom when we all are living out of like little tiny places where everybody is hooked to some kind of electronic device, and everybody's trying to like have their peace and quiet, and you still have to function together, So it has been all sort of crazy lately. I don't know what to say.
So do you reserve your evenings then for studio time?
I usually try to, like, depending on my schedule, because for example, like at the U, I'm teaching Tuesday, Thursday, pretty much from 9 o'clock till about 12. And then I'm teaching Monday, Wednesday at Westminster from 2 to 8. So, and plus, extra prep time or grading or whatever. But I usually try to save the Tuesday, Thursday, Friday afternoons to go to the studio.
That's not too bad. That's not too bad a schedule. That's pretty good.
It's good. Sometimes it's not, sometimes it's not like that, because I also do a lot of applications for public artwork and things like that. And you always feel like something is going to take half an hour, and then 4 hours later you are still there, sometimes the schedule is not as optimal as I would like it to be, but it has been working.
Good. Well, in your process, your painting process, I would like you to talk about that. It appears that you create a lot of texture. How do you create your texture, or just talk about your process in general?
Well, I'm not sure. I think that the images I actually sent to you, they were the paper pieces. So they are basically relief pieces. They're 3-dimensional.
Mhm.
And so I rip paper, I cut paper, and I glue the individual pieces individually. And that creates that texture. I like to think about the work I'm creating as almost these remnants of fur, skins, animals, sometimes like organic material.
Mhm.
Some of them have almost like a spill look, or it depends on the piece. They're all a little bit different.
Mhm.
So I basically assemble the pieces from a lot of little tiny parts.
That has to be extremely time consuming
Right.
and
It,
tedious.
it is both, and you have to take little breaks away from it, because I think it's very meditative in a way, but
Mhm.
I think the repetition could get to you over time, and
Yeah.
so that's why I think switch to from doing the paperwork to painting to doing other things as well.
Mhm.
But I really enjoy that labor sort of. I like the labor part of it, because I
Sure.
think when I'm painting, I'm sort of like considering almost like every brush stroke. But
Mhm.
when I'm creating these paper pieces, I have an idea, and you sort of have that in the back of your head, and then you just start working, and the labor sort of takes over, and then you sort of stop and look at it again and figure out, like, is it going the right direction, so it's a little bit different process from painting.
Well, when you are at these paper pieces, do you paint them previous to cutting and pasting and so forth?
Some of them, yes. Sometimes I mostly use white paper and black paper.
Okay.
And I do paint a lot of times the black paper, because I cannot find, for some reason, a black paper that has the right texture,
Mhm.
sort of the right thickness that I like to work with. So I painted with black gesso. Sometimes I paint it with different colors. Sometimes I paint one color on one side, another color on the other side, so playing with the way how you see it from
Mhm.
different directions. Um, and I really like that process too. I think it's almost reminds me of creating lithography, preparing the stone or something. So I think that sort of the labor of it is very important for me. Sort of.
Of course.
Yeah.
Um, I had another question and it escaped me. It'll come back, I hope.
Okay.
You know how that goes.
Right.
Well, I also read that you are a co-owner of a gallery.
We used to, my husband and I, Cordell Taylor, we used to own a gallery here in Salt Lake City for many, many years, sort of on the west side on Second South next to Bricks. And it was a great gallery. We did a lot of emerging artist shows, and a lot of sort of out of the, um, you know, major trend shows back then. And then we moved the gallery to Denver. And since then, has been quite a few years ago, probably almost 10 years, or maybe even
Oh,
longer. We got out of the gallery business. And I miss it still. I miss it. But it has been, because it wasn't a commercial gallery. Um, it was a lot of work, and it cost us a lot of money
of
because
course, of course.
because we basically supplemented the
Well,
the
what was
space.
the name of the gallery that was here in Salt Lake?
Cordell Taylor Gallery.
Cordell Taylor. Okay, that must have been before my time getting
I
involved with
think
it.
so. Yes, because it was. I think it closed like right around the Olympics,
Okay, of
because
course.
we were renting this really nice big space, and of course right around the Olympics, people got greedy, and so
Yeah.
so we lost the space, and we couldn't find another big space, and since then, my husband has been renting a big studio space, like several actually, but the space he is in is sort of, it looks a little bit like a gallery, but we don't really operate it as a gallery. It's just sort of a showroom and a studio. Yeah.
I assume your husband is an artist as well.
He's a sculptor, yes.
He's a sculptor. Okay, great. Fantastic. Your work seems to reflect your interest in our carbon footprints, although I don't know that you use that terminology, but is that a fair critique?
I think what I get really frustrated about is the lack of response people have towards global warming and all these issues we are having. It seems like a lot of people just don't want to even consider that they are doing anything that would impact the world. And I think I am concerned. I'm concerned for my son, for his future. And I think especially lately, I've been doing work that dealt with different natural and man-made disasters, flooding, fires, just different things, landslides, I don't know, tornadoes, you name it. But lately, I've been really fascinated by just sort of refuse piles, like garbage piles. The number of garbage we are producing, and it seems like almost like with the pandemic, it's getting worse because everything is double, triple wrap, and people are using more and more plastic. People are like using more and more chemicals, and it just seems to be like growing and growing and growing, and just this idea that it's going somewhere, but it's not disappearing really. It's really scary to me. Yeah.
I get frustrated in like supermarkets when they ask you if you want paper or plastic, if they have that option, and people invariably say plastic, and I think, oh, why don't you ask for paper?
Well, the funny thing is that sometimes, like if I don't have my own bag, I ask for plastic too. But the reason is because of my dog, because I reuse the bags. So, so they're like multiple purpose bags.
Yeah,
so,
true.
I mean, I don't know. It's just so hard. It's difficult. And I think it's a difficult subject for me. And I find it interesting from sort of, the scientific point of view, but also I find the images sort of intriguing in a way, because I think that as scary as they are, that visually they are very interesting too. So there's a little bit of both, there's like the political side of it, but there's also the visual side of it. Yeah.
But because of the political side of it, the implications of your work having political implications, ramifications,
Right.
Do you get some blowback because of those political?
Yes, I do sometimes. I did actually quite a few years ago. I did a show in Alabama, in Mobile, and I had this big paper tornado that was like 15 feet tall, hanging piece as part of the show. And there was a little bit of a discussion about the piece because they just had a big tornado in one of the counties nearby. And so, some people thought that it was insensitive. And we were just sort of trying to explain that it wasn't really that it was more a commentary on, the frequency of these events happening rather than on any level taking advantage of it or making a spectacle out of it. More like bringing attention to, look, this is happening, maybe we need to reconsider what we are doing. And so that was sort of, I think, unexpected. Even for the gallery, we had to issue some statements, actually, even for the newspaper about it. Sometimes people are sort of interested in this idea of portraying something that it's really ugly, but in a painting it's actually sort of pretty. So it's like that strange beauty. And so I haven't had that much backlash. I think more people are intrigued. But again, people who go to the galleries are usually more on the liberal side, and I'm making a stereotype right now, but
No, I agree with you. Well, now I saw your painting of the oil derrick that was on fire.
Right.
Am I right? Right.
Yes.
And you talk about a painting that is a catastrophe, but yet in a painting it's beautiful. And I thought that was painting was fantastic. I loved it.
And that's sort of my idea, because I think people are more likely to consider something if they are first sort of seduced by beauty.
Sure.
And I think for me, even though I hate violence, watching James Bond movie is interesting too, because even though the story is stupid or whatever, but the special effects are like marvelous, so you go like, wow, that's just like a striking image. And so to me, a lot of times when I look at images, I look for that sort of contradiction of beauty and danger.
Yeah. And that's good. So what's your medium when you paint? Is it acrylic, oil?
Mostly oil. Sometimes I start with acrylics. I've done some work that started with various mixed media, but mostly oil. Yeah.
Well, now this black and white paper that you paint prior to cutting it up and so forth. Am I right to assume that that's probably mostly acrylic?
It's gesso. It's black gesso.
Oh, just gesso. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
But what if you use another color? Do you tend the white gesso to?
I try different things, because with a lot of acrylic paint, they don't glue after that very well.
I didn't know that.
So you have to sort of figure out like a good mix between a tempera, acrylic, clear gesso. I mean, I tried a lot of different things, and I wish they would make something that it's color gesso, that it's as sort of satin and like beautifully like opaque as the black one is. But I think you have to find some. You probably could have it sort of custom made, but I don't know. I looked into it a couple times. I know it's quite expensive. So I'm sort of like doing my own experiments, because a lot of times, like, if I knew exactly what I wanted, I probably would go, okay, let's have them make me a gallon somewhere, But because I'm a lot of times experimenting, I like to have the flexibility and not end up with 10 gallons of paint.
Sure, absolutely, of course. Well, have you tried flash paint? It's a water-based acrylic paint, but I think it was originally created for sign painting. But I really like it. And for instance, when I do a gallery wrap canvas, I paint the sides black, and I use this flash paint, which it's flat. It's not glossy.
Right.
So you might try that. I think that Utrecht. It's not Utrecht anymore.
Is it spelled flash?
Flash, FLASHE.
Okay.
Yeah. Try it. And Utrecht. Blick. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Blick just got in some. They're very small tubes, but they just got in it, and they come in various colors. So you might give that a shot, because it could possibly help
Okay.
you when it comes to color. So
Okay.
that's my idea.
Great. Thank you.
And I also use fast drying oils.
As I said, it's interesting because I'm trying to use like a lot of like the pH neutral, like
Mm-hmm.
acid free glue and stuff like that. And I actually am not that concerned about the acid free aspect, although it's good to use that. But it actually glues really good. It's like you need to have a glue that doesn't take forever to dry
Yes.
and glue that is fairly clean and easy to work with. And for some reason, even with some of the like really flat acrylic paint or latex paint, like house latex paint, um, it won't stick. It seems like it's sticking and then it falls off.
Yes.
And so or it just doesn't hold as strongly. So
Mm-hmm.
I think there is something about a lot of the acrylics that basically prevent the paper from absorbing the glue because they create like a skin where the gesso is absorbent. So there is like a little difference, and so I don't know. It's like, as I said, like some things seem like, oh, that has to work, and it doesn't. So, but I will give it a try because yeah,
How
that would be
how
good.
how about the golden gels? You haven't tried those either,
I have tried those,
and they
and
don't stick. Mm.
it's sort of the same thing because it creates a skin over top,
Yeah.
and it doesn't stick to it.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
I mean, I
Okay.
tried different mixtures, but it doesn't want to work. I'm not sure why, but
Yeah. Well, what are you working on right now?
well, I have done some paper pieces that are hanging in my studio. I have done some random sort of sculpture weird pieces that are quite different. Over the summer, I did tons of drawings on flat paper because I was just getting a little frustrated with the amount of paintings and sculpture and paperwork and all of this stuff I actually have
Mm-hmm.
because storage is definitely an issue.
It is.
And I'm reworking some oil paintings. But to tell you the truth, like I do have these bursts of energies and ideas, but lately it has been difficult because it seems like there is no output. It's like so
Mm-hmm.
you feel like you're making things, but what do you do with it? What do you do with it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting. I have had like different discussions with other artists and did couple interviews before, and it seems like the people who are not doing art as profession, they are doing more art, but actual artists are doing less work
Mm. That's
overall.
interesting. Yeah, that's interesting.
Because I think there is this sort of drive that it's missing, because there's not the energy to show the work, or the energy you get from showing the work, I should say. And even though it seems like there's some shows starting to pop up, and I'm going to have a show actually at the Knox Gallery in January. So I'm excited about that. And I'm going to be part of a group show at the Bountiful Art Center.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm doing some shows, but it still seems sort of stagnant,
Uh-huh.
So it's, I think right now I sort of feel a little bit stuck, so I'm doing work, but I'm not really as excited about some of the work as I might be otherwise. And I hope it comes back.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
exactly.
I need
Of
that
course.
excitement. Yeah.
But Chuck Close says amateurs wait for inspiration and the rest of us just get to work.
Right. I still go to work, but I don't necessarily like what I'm doing.
Oh, okay.
You know?
But with respect to storage now, a biographer of Picasso stated in his book Conversations with Picasso that when Picasso died, he had 45,000 unsold paintings. Can
It's
you imagine?
yes, I can actually. I actually can. I have two storages full of paperworks,
Uh-huh.
and then in my husband's studio, I'm storing a lot of paintings, and then I have my own studio that is full of work, just bursting. So, I mean, I might not have 40,000, but I have quite a few. The difference between me and Picasso is that every time he filled a studio, he just locked it up and moved to a different space.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
I mean, that sounds absolutely optimal to me because this idea of moving all of that stuff somewhere is just scaring me. It
That would
just
be a
freaks
big
me out.
challenge. That would be a
Yes.
big challenge. Well, I've taken over one room in my home and my double garage.
Yeah, that's easy to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, uh, how recent was your show Remnants?
The one at Ogden?
Yes.
Let me think. It just seems like time is like it stands still right now. I'm just trying to let's see when was it?
Was it in 2019?
I think so, yeah, because I think it was like I know it was summer and it wasn't this past summer, so it must have been the summer before.
Yeah,
Yes.
2019. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, talk about that. It's 3D sculpture paper,
Mm-hmm.
a paper show, paper sculpture.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that sculpture.
Well, I mean, I have majority of the pieces in there were sort of wall hanging pieces. So they are somewhere between sort of sculptural installation work and painting. I do like this idea that they are hanging because somehow the hanging format it works for me. I think
Hmm.
that sort of comes from my background as a painter.
Hmm.
And I do like this idea of coming off of the wall as well. And I think in my paintings, I'm very sort of, I tend to be more muted in my color palette and very subtle in the color changes. And when I work with the paper, I let the paper do its own thing. So I don't, I might control the basic overall color, but the light and shadows sort of do the rest.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, these strips of paper,
Uh-huh.
and they were all white, right?
No. Some of
No.
them were black
Okay.
too.
Okay.
A
Uh,
lot of them were black as well. Yeah.
but these strips of paper in remnants, how long were those strips?
Uh, it really depends. Some of them might have been like 8 feet, 9 feet. Yeah.
So the length of the strips varied. They weren't all
Mm-hmm.
uniform. And how did you cut these strips? I think I saw you doing it, but it's
Well, the way how I do the strips, I have actually a shredder.
hmm.
And I use this old style shredder. And I sometimes like just cut a certain section, certain lengths, and then I glue them together. But a lot of the other shapes, because some of them are more like wedge shape, I cut them by hand. But the long strips I use a shredder. Yeah.
Hmm. How many pieces of do you estimate that it took to create remnants? How many strips?
Uh, you know, Probably thousands. I don't know. I don't really count it because I don't do it in the same day. I don't do it I sort of take breaks in between. And so a lot of times I even put stuff away for a couple of weeks and then go back to it. So
Hmm.
I don't know. That's actually a question people ask me quite often, like how long does it take or how many pieces are there? And that's a hard one to answer for me.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Well, and even as a painter,
Hmm.
we get the very same question. Well, how long did
Right.
it take? Which you
Yes.
really don't want to answer it. And for the most part, you can't answer it. So
Right.
a
Yeah.
good answer is, well, it's taken me a lifetime to get to this point.
Right. True. True.
You're doing a lot of exploration in your work as well.
I tried to.
And that's a good answer.
Yeah.
I think the exploration is fun. It's great. So, all right, tell me back to remnants. Share with us what the meaning behind remnants is or was.
Um, remnants is for me like this idea of what is left behind after an event, after a disaster, after a lifetime, after an experience. So it's almost like this presence of absence. So I think about the pieces I think I mentioned before as maybe like pelts from animals
Mm-hmm.
or
Yes.
parts of debris or like just sort of like snippets of memory of what was once alive or
Mm-hmm.
lively. So that's the idea, and I think for me too, it really is sort of tied to my personal history as an immigrant and somebody who had to leave, her country with basically nothing, and then just sort of living through memories.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. I tend to always sort of think back quite a bit, and use my memory, and even in projection into the future, there's always like the consciousness of the past.
Sure. Of course. Favorite artist, dead or alive?
Um, I have so many. I have so many people I admire, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I don't even pay attention, to tell you the truth, who the artist really is. It's just like, I be subscribed to Art News and to Sculpture Magazine, and I love to just sort of look through, and sometimes like things catch your attention, and you sort of look at it, it's like, how was it made, or
Yes.
what material is this, or how, or the idea is interesting. So I like different artists for different reasons. So one of my sort of all-time favorite is Louise Bourgeois,
Mm-hmm.
because I really love her idea of actually working with memory, and thinking about family relationships and sort of family roles. And I also love her sort of sensibility to material. But there is a lot of other artists that I really like. Again, for different reasons. So
Mm-hmm.
I like Anne Hamilton, Tara Donovan, um, and a lot of male artists too. I'm sort of blank right now, to tell you the truth.
Oh, that's
It's
all right.
like overwhelming,
That's fine.
but there is just, as I said, that there is just a lot, and sometimes it's not just um, the body of work, but it's a specific work.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
so it's not always the entire um, life work of that person,
Sure.
but it's more perhaps like their approach to the subject or their usage of material.
Sure.
Yeah.
What's your least favorite activity associated with being an artist?
Um, Writing applications.
Oh, yes. I agree. I agree.
Yes.
I agree.
And I mean, to some extent, I sort of don't mind, but I get really sometimes frustrated by the different formats and the different requirements and the statement this and that, and it just gets time consuming. Yeah.
It is very time consuming, and then trying to follow their little rules.
Right.
And you want to make sure you do, otherwise it's going to get kicked out.
Right.
What, Lenka, what advice do you give your students?
That's a good question. I think an advice that I would give to anybody, but including my students, is to be persistent and self-motivated, because otherwise, I think it just doesn't matter whatever you cannot do it as an artist.
Yeah.
And to be interested, to actually look around and to sort of not be satisfied with the first answer, but actually do a bigger search, and including sort of inner search, and mostly keep at it. keep at it, keep doing it, because I think it's everything or anything else, it takes time, and you cannot do something well unless you do it a lot.
Exactly. Practice.
Right. But I think there's practice, but there's also that sort of idea of being maybe more inquisitive, because I think a lot of people can be very good craftsmen, but they are not necessarily very good artists. And I think there's a difference, and I think the difference is in the exploration into something that it's perhaps a little bit new.
Exploration and trying new materials and trying new techniques and so forth. All that above. Well, Lenka, we've been on here over 45 minutes, probably getting close to an hour.
Okay. Great.
Is there anything else you would like to add before we close?
I would just like to say that I think in the recent climate and just sort of the whole pandemic situation, that it has been extremely hard for artists to sort of survive. And we have a lot of artist friends, and everybody's saying the same thing, that there's just not enough support for individual artists. There might be more support for organizations, but I think it has been incredibly hard for artists, and I wish there was more resources for individual artists, because I think even before the pandemic, most artists had a second or third job.
Yes.
And now it's almost like, fourth or fifth job. So I'm just sort of thinking, like, I'm sure like a lot of people are struggling, but I really think that for the creative people right now, that it has been extreme struggle, and I wish there was more support.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Well, your episode is number 87.
Okay.
And it will be available on Apple Podcasts, and it will also be available on the show's website, which is www.theartistvoice.info. And I'll send you this information as well.
That would be great.
And then it'll be available on Facebook, so you can share it from there as well, however you want to share it, if you so want to share it.
Okay.
And I want to tell you also, because I've interviewed 87 individuals over the past year and a half. I am curating a virtual show, or at least that's the plans at this point. I was going to do it at one of the venues here in Salt Lake City and have everybody ship their work in, but it's just not going to work out. So I'm planning on a virtual show. So if you'd like to participate in that, I would certainly be happy to have you.
Okay.
I'll send you more information as plans
Sounds
develop.
great. Sounds
Okay.
great. I'm looking forward to it.
Great, great. And again, I want to thank you so much for your time. It's been great getting to know you a little bit, and
Okay, well,
hopefully we'll
thank
talk again.
thank you for having me.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, thanks for watching. That was Lenka Konopasek, and very interesting guest. But I want to thank you for listening and watching. If you're on here, you can find Lenka on her website at lenkakonopasek.com, and it's LenkaKonopasek.com, as well as on, I believe she's on Instagram and Facebook. And you can find a portion of the show, as I shared with Lenka, on Apple Podcasts and most podcast platforms. So you may also listen on the show's website, www.theartistsvoice.info. Look for the announcement of the next Facebook and Instagram for the date of the time and show of the next interview. In the meantime, this is Jerry Hardesty reminding you to stay safe, wear that mask, and observe social distancing. Have a great day.